All right, here we go.
All right.
Week 5, last week.
All right, so we're going to do a little bit of review of what we've done for the past 4 weeks. So maybe you've gotten to the 4th week and you've talked through all of this. So our first week was to develop a mission, which to me was probably one of the harder ones. And so you're developing a mission greater than, or what is that? Great than your own
personal happiness. Yeah, a mission. We all have to have a mission that's bigger than ourselves.
Bigger,
if it's going to draw us out, I think so.
All right, and then the second week was we're looking at those forces that are outside that are against our mission.
Brandon doesn't like that I call them savages. Call them what you want. Those things that are coming in to destroy the kind of marriage that we're building. We got to shut that barn door, whatever you call it, shut the chicken coop, whatever. Figure out what those things are for y'all.
All right, and then the third week was that we were going to have a weekly connection point, and we gave you some questions, or you could come up with your own questions, and so you're supposed to be asking each other, getting to know each other, knowing what's happening every week.
And we've kind of decided for us that connection point happens on Sunday, so we can kind of look forward to our whole week and say, hey, how can I love you this week? Gives us a chance to check in with one another as we kind of think about the week in front of us.
Yeah. And then last week was seeing our differences as leveraging, as not as deficiency. I don't like deficiency.
You don't like deficiencies, no. Seeing our differences as blessings is one of the keys.
I like that much.
Yeah, that's what it is. Our differences are blessings. And so now that we've kind of got there, we've got a mission especially, we're connecting, we're shutting the door on those savages. And now that we see that, wow, God put me with this person was custom designed for me by God. Now we can begin to develop a plan for our marriage. And the truth is, if any of you guys have ever heard us talk before, most couples don't have any kind of plan for how they're going to build a great marriage. Couples plan for their wedding, they plan for their honeymoons, but they don't plan on how they're going to build a great marriage. They just assume that somehow they're going to stumble into a great marriage, which rarely happens for most people. And it is a very rare thing that even if people have been married for a really long time, that I can find somebody and say, well, man, I see you guys have a great marriage. Tell me what's your plan for building a great marriage? And most couples really struggle about that. And the truth is that for many of us, we take better care of our cars than we do of our marriages. I mean, our car has a little booklet, and hopefully most of you see your little booklet and you do what you're supposed to do to take care of your car and kind of maintain it. And yet for many of us, since marriage doesn't come with a little book, that's what we need. Oh, a little maintenance booklet for your marriage. When couples get married, they need a maintenance booklet that they would then, that's a good idea. That should be our book. All right. But we don't have that. And because we don't have that, we kind of coast along. And for many couples, when you're first married and before kids are coming around or whatever, you kind of coast along and things are okay. And then you don't even really notice as things kind of, they simmer down and we're not paying attention. And some of the things that helped you have a great marriage in the beginning go away and you don't even notice. So we want to encourage you now to spend a number of conversations over the next months to begin to develop your plan for your marriage. And so when I say plan, I want to be clear here because I've got I have one particular close friend who has a mental budget. And has mental plans. And mental budgets and mental plans do not qualify in the kind of thing that we're talking about here today.
And this is different than your mission. So your mission
right, your mission statement. Now the plan is going to help you achieve the mission statement, but what we want to do is recognize, is there anything more important that God has given to you as a steward of, more important than your marriage relationship? And what you're doing for your car, what some of you are doing for your business, what some of you are doing for all sorts of other things. Why aren't we investing the same kind of intentionality into our marriage relationship?
Exactly the word I was thinking about.
Yeah, that's right. So now we're really coming into that intentionality part of this that's super important. So because we have folks we know that define plans differently than we do, we thought it would be important to define what a plan is. All right, so here's the 5 parts to a plan that we're talking about right here. And the first part is that it's written. Just blows your mind.
Write it down.
A plan is written down. I know that's going to be hard for some of you because, I mean, it's all up here. But the problem with everything up here, this works fine if you're going solo. All right. So if you want to be single, mental plans and budgets are great. But if you're going to collaborate with somebody else, it's important that we write it down. Now, y'all probably never experienced this before, but sometimes when I say something, Susan hears something different than what I said. And when she says stuff, I have to translate what she's saying into a language I understand. So there's a lot of translation going on here, and something beautiful and wonderful happens when you write it down. You both can see it. You both can read it. It brings a beautiful understanding so that you can both come into agreement. So
both remember that you can go back and read.
Right, you can go ahead. That's right. That's right. That's one of the beautiful things. No, it's written down. All right. Yeah, this is what we agreed to right here. You can go back and check it and not argue about who said what. It's written down. So it's written.
Okay, so everything else is going to start with an R, so they'll be easier to remember. They should
written starts with an R too. It's a silent R.
There you go.
That's why I had to make. I had to make these. I had to move these around because after I got them, I realized I could make them all R sounding words. Written counts because it's like an R.
All right, the second one is resourced or resources. I want to say resources.
Okay, resources works as well.
Okay, so this could be multiple different things. This could be finding the time that you need to be able to do or to make the plan or do things in the plan. It can be money that you're going to need. If you choose that you're going to have a date night, you may have to budget money. It could be, do we need a lock on our door? That was Jeff's.
Yeah.
It could be, do we need some more education? Do we need a book on this? Do we need to watch a video or a podcast?
Time is a resource. Yeah. So if you have a plan to do something amazing, but you're not willing to resource that plan, then it's not a plan. So you still don't have a plan. All 5 pieces of this have to be in place for it to be a plan. You have to be willing to resource it and go, what is it going to take for us to achieve these plans? You can want to do all sorts of things, but if you're not committed to resourcing those things, it really is never going to amount to anything. So we want to be very intentional. What kind of resources are going to be necessary for us to do this? All right.
All right. So the next one's going to be reminders. It kind of goes with me with the resources. So things like we put stuff on our calendar. So if we're going to have a date night, we need a calendar and we share a calendar. And so we know that Thursday night's going to be our date night. So that's on the calendar. So that would be I forgot the word, a reminder.
Yeah.
We also do things like I have sent myself, or I have calendar reminders that come up, or hey, send Jeff a text, or I know that it's part of my intentionality so I don't forget. If I want to give Jeff a compliment or do something, hey, I want to make sure I shoot him something during the day that is a positive comment. I might even put it on my calendar so it dings me so that I can send something. If that's part of a plan, if we're going to talk about some different needs and things like that. And so to remind myself to do that, although it should be intentional and it should just come to my mind, sometimes I'm not that good and I have to be reminded.
Right. A plan needs to ding and buzz and ring and do something. All right. There needs to be some built-in to the kind of plan we're talking about. There needs to be some built-in things that are going to help you remember, hey, we've got a plan for this. What dings us, what buzzes us, what reminds us that these are the things that we're becoming very intentional about. So the plan has reminders in it that are built in. Primarily, that's going to be calendar for most things, but you can be creative about that as well.
Well, we also talked about that you can be intentional about birthdays, because birthdays are a big deal for us, and anniversaries are a big deal for us because it's a way to celebrate each other. So that's something else. It's calendar.
Yeah. Some of the holidays and stuff like that. Absolutely. All right. Here's the fourth part of the plan. The plan is revisited. It's not a one-time thing. Life is constantly changing. Your situation is changing. Your kids are growing. Your job is changing. Wow, all of us have experienced a huge amount of change here lately. So you're continually revisiting the plan. You don't get to make it and then live off of it for the next 10 years. This is something that needs to be revisited on a regular basis. And so one of your dings, buzzes, reminders is going to be, hey, it's time to revisit this part of our plan and check this out and see what this is looking like as things change, as they're going to all the time. Or maybe just something stopped working and you say, hey, you know what? That doesn't work any longer. So our total life right now doesn't work like it did when there were no kids in the house.
No.
So we've had to revisit our normal plans for date nights and all that kind of stuff because it does not work like it did when the house was empty. So we're having to figure all that out again. And the fifth part of the plan is that plans are refined. We're constantly saying, how can we do this better? It's not just a matter of revisiting when circumstances change. It's also a matter of how can this be better? How can we improve upon this? We're constantly trying to refine the plan because we see it, because it's written down, because it dings and buzzes and reminds us, because we're revisiting it. We're also having the opportunity to refine it on a regular basis. So if you have something written down that is resourced with reminders, that is revisited and refined on a regular basis, then you've got a plan. If you don't, you got a good idea. You've got hope. You've got good intentions, like I do, of all sorts of things. I have good intentions to work out. I think it's a great idea. I should do it. I just haven't lately. All right, that's what you have. All right, so let's think about that. Let's get a couple of areas and let's just kind of walk maybe through that in a real general area. Because the truth is, most of you are doing, some of y'all are going, well, wait, we're doing good in our marriage. I know you are. That's wonderful, but you haven't named it. You haven't protected it. You haven't identified it. And because you haven't identified it, you may not know if it goes away. If it's something is adding value to your marriage that is important, don't you want to protect it? And if something just happened and you go, okay, you know, that's just kind of the way we do it, and so it works, it may just not happen one day. So we want to capture things that are really working in your marriage and begin to kind of lay out a plan that is written so that we can invest it. Really, the writing part is so that we can work on it together. Yeah. The funniest thing happened when we graduated from seminary. I made $14,000. We made $14,000 our last year in seminary. And when I got my job, I was going to make like $23,000 for the year. And they were going to give us a house to live in. And I was like, I was going to buy a boat and a new car. And I was going to buy all this stuff. And we got there to start us at our first job. And I'm just thinking, and Susan's, I'm not being allowed to buy a boat and everything. And I'm like, where's all my money going? You know what? She did the smartest thing. She just laid it all out in front of me and said, it's all right here. Look at it. It wasn't about feelings. It wasn't about emotions. It wasn't about it was just about, here's where all of our money is. It was all written down. And so we could talk about something that was written down and not about emotions or feelings, but about a plan that was written down. And then I understood. All right, so let's talk about a couple here. Do you fight well? Do you fight well? I think that is a great question. Truth is that most couples struggle in this regard. Now, one of the things that people need to recognize is great marriages are not characterized by the absence of conflict. The absence of conflict often means that I don't trust you. And so where conflict exists, it's not bad to have some conflict and some. Susan doesn't like the word fights. So now,
right. Discussions.
Strong marital discussions is what we call them. All right. Other people would call it a fight. We call them strong marital discussions. Having strong marital discussions is a sign that we trust one another and that we trust in our marriage. Not having it doesn't mean that somebody has a great marriage. It generally means that somebody has chosen just to suck it up and not say anything. All right. So, do you have a plan to fight well? I mean, it's a great idea. What resources would you need to learn to fight well? If you go, hey, we don't fight well then how about you know what? Do we need a book? Do we need a class? Do we need a counselor? There would be no greater thing you could do this year than to figure out how can we have great fights? where Susan and I had the best fight.
I don't know if this is the one that we're talking about. I'm thinking about one that we didn't have a good fight, and that we should have had a plan in place before we had the fight, because you had resolved after you read something in a book.
Okay.
This is the
I'm
way
not
that we
talking about
should-
that one. I'm not bringing up our bad stuff in front of everybody. All right. That was long ago. All right. Now, I'm thinking of when we had a fight that began around the dinner table, and then we went for a walk, and we walked for about an hour around the neighborhood. And we had the most beautiful fight, strong marital discussion, because I said, I'm unhappy with this, and I'm struggling. And Susan said, I'm unhappy with this. And I said, wow, that hurts, but thank you for sharing. And I said, I'm unhappy here. And she said, wow, that hurts my feelings, but thank you for sharing. And so, man, but we walked the neighborhood for like an hour and just,
it wasn't a shouting match.
It wasn't a
That's
shouting
why
match. It
I
was
don't
a
wanna call
strong
it fighting.
No,
it was
wasn't
a good discussion, but it was not an easy discussion.
It was a hard discussion. It was a beautiful fight, a beautiful, strong marital discussion. All right. So let me share with you guys a few of our just kind of rules for fighting right here, just to kind of give you talking about writing something down, because we've been working on this. All right. So I'm gonna give it to you real quick, so we got to keep going. We will not avoid difficult conversations that will strengthen our marriage. We will not have strong marital discussions in front of others. Come on, people. Don't do that. Stop. It's embarrassing and nobody likes it. Don't have strong marital discussions in front of others. We will soften our startup. That's a whole nother. We will recognize that the responder determines the outcome. The person who responds to the first person who speaks determines the atmosphere of that conversation. We will say thank you. We will recognize that strong marital discussions exhibit our trust in one another and our deep commitment to our marriage. We will give each other space when needed. We will recognize who the enemy is and reject his lies. We will be okay. Walking during strong marital discussions is preferable when possible, and we will be sensitive to timing. All right, so you know what? We just took some things. We just began to talking about what does it look like to have a plan for this. So let's keep going though, because we're gonna run out of time quickly. That's a good one. All right. You'll do this one?
No,
Do
I
that?
don't
All right. Are you having sex with your spouse? If you are, then one of the things I would say is it adding value to your marriage? And have you ever just said, gosh, our sexual relationship really adds a lot to our relationship? How can you refine it? Is your sexual relationship, we're so much better than we used to be. We are better and better. I can't imagine 10 more years from now. But is it being refined, or is it like brushing your teeth? We're like, hey, let's go do it. I mean, you know. Okay, all right, sorry. Okay, all right. Yeah, all right. Do you need to revisit it from time to time and talk about? Most couples have a really hard time talking about this, which is why we always recommend that people buy a book. And you have your conversation about what somebody else says. This is one of our favorites right here. Red Hot Monogamy is great.
It's listed in your resource.
Yeah. Are you going to love each other well?
So this is kind of like studying your partner, your spouse. And there's lots of good books out there as far as you've probably heard of Love Languages, His Needs, Her Needs. Are you studying your spouse and knowing how to love them well? Are they a recreational companionship? Is that something that's good? Another thing, personality profile. We've been doing a lot of personality profiles around here lately, seems like. Understanding the personality, why he ticks the way that he does, why he argues the way that he does. And Jeff's so good about doing this as far as like studying me. We always joke that he probably knows me better than I know him, although we've been together most of our lives. But continually asking each other questions. Jeff's great about putting questions in the car if we're going to drive somewhere for more than 30 minutes or something like that. He puts questions in the car, and I'm amazed since we've known each other for
30 something, 35 years.
That there's questions that I have a hard time answering. And so that gives us a chance to kind of not get to know each other, but know something that maybe we didn't know, or maybe know it a little more intimately. But it's really cool to know what his needs are, if it's, gifts, or if it's touch, or if it's whatever. So that I can make sure that I'm meeting those needs and that somebody else is not meeting those needs.
Yeah, and this takes resources, even if the resource is your energy level. because some of the things that ways that I love Susan require energy from me. They don't come easy. It's not like super fun. And some of the things that, you know, so it requires even, or finances or time or whatever, those things, what kind of resources are needed for that? How do you need to learn one another about that? And this continually has to be revisited.
That's what I was about to say. Things change all
Things
the time.
are changing all the
as
time.
far as,
Yeah.
I have several examples of that, but we'll keep going.
Yeah. Are you going to have a spiritual adventure together? Are you going to pray together? Most couples really struggle with that. That's not easy. Will you have a Sunday morning ritual that inspires intimacy and not anger? Many couples on Sunday morning, especially when they have young kids in the house, Sunday morning is not a fun place to be. How do you create so that Sunday is not dreaded, so that you both pitch in and create some kind of ritual that is enjoyable rather than working against one another? We do a devotional together. What does it look like for you guys to have a spiritual life that's being shared together and working through that? Are you going to be boring, or are you going to have an adventurous marriage? If you're going to be boring, it's easy. But if you're going to have adventures together, what kind of adventures are you going to have together? How are you going to resource those adventures? Are you going to see and experience new things? What's that going to be like?
Finding things that you like to do together, or new things that would be interesting together too, to me is an adventure.
Yeah. Finding those things where you're doing them together rather than separate from one another. Are you going to guard your marriage from the perils of money or affairs or pornography or busyness? How is it that you're going to guard your marriage very intentionally? So we think there's lots of opportunities for all of us, Susan and I included, to just continually grow and kind of lay out a plan and say, we're committed to this. Let's get serious about building and not just hoping that we have a great marriage. I gave you guys in the handout, I gave you our first plan that we wrote probably around our 10-year anniversary, because I think it was our Big 10. It was on our 10th year anniversary. We've been married 26 years now. Was the first time we kind of wrote down a plan.
So you can kind of see too that this was it's pretty basic. It wasn't a whole lot of detail, but we had discussed it and we kind of decided, here's at this point in our life, here's the top 10 things that we think are most important. So I'll just kind of read through them really quick so you can hear kind of what we thought in the very beginning, our basic.
Yeah, this is where we started. So if you don't have any kind of written plan, this is where we began.
Yeah, so I'm going to count them down. So 10 was, we'll keep our parents out of our marital business. So
that's a good idea for everybody.
That was important. 9 is we will protect our marriage. So that was kind of the guardrail type things. We didn't get specific on that yet.
We didn't have the guardrail language at that time. We just said we want to protect our marriage because we looked around and saw that that was something that we needed to do. And so that's what we said. 8
was we'll go to bed together. We could probably be on different schedules. I would probably prefer to stay up a lot later and he goes to bed a lot easier, but we made a pact or an agreement.
That's still, you know what's funny is that's still not conflict, but it's still an area that we laugh about almost every night when I'm like turning off the lights and Susan's going, oh, you know, I mean.
It's not quite that way as far as.
But it's still a compromise. We both have to work towards it. Yeah,
just
to make our schedule work out together.
All right, 7 is we will create a marriage-centered family. So that's versus like a child-centered family. It would be marriage-centered, so it would be centered around our marriage instead of around our kids. We will love the budget.
And we love the budget. We are so thankful for the budget. We are so thankful for the budget.
It has enabled us to do a lot of things.
It has.
We will wear...
It's in there. You have to read it.
We will wear each other out sexually.
That's a whole another conversation, but that's a good one.
That's a whole conversation.
Yeah,
yes.
That's a good one.
We will study about marriage, and so we've continued to do that. We will give each other time away, meaning some separate time when needed. We will recognize that we can only change ourselves. That kind of came out of Power of Praying Wife. Another one of my favorite books. And our number 1 is we will create spiritual fun and adventure.
Yeah. So what would it look like for you to begin to just kind of begin to write down? Because some of these you guys are going to know right away. Wow, one of the things that adds value to our marriage that's important to us is this. So you're going to begin to be able to just kind of make a whole list. And so that's your conversation this week, is to just begin to make a list of those habits, the activities, and the rituals that are helping you to build a great marriage. And just kind of let it flow. What are all the things that you think are helping you build a great marriage, whether it's a date night or you walk together or you work out together, you go to church together? Just start naming a whole bunch of things. And after you've named a whole bunch of those things, kind of begin to look at them and say, do these fit in any categories? I mean, can we begin to categorize these things like around we continue to date each other, a spiritual life, how we handle communication or conflict or whatever, and begin to kind of see how things would break down. And so just begin with some of the things that you're already doing and go, hey, because if you like each other, and we're assuming that you guys are fairly healthy, what are the things we're already doing that are helping to build that kind of great relationship right there? And begin to write them down and make a plan in one area, and write it down. And I'm not going to say it'll be fun, because Robert keeps making fun of me every time I say this is going to be great fun. But once again, take the area that you would least argue about. So don't take the area that's going to cause a lot of conflict. Take an area that both of you would enjoy talking about. If sex is a really difficult conversation, don't do sex. Buy a book on sex and read it and talk about it. But don't do the sex one first. Find an area that you would enjoy. Maybe you fight reasonably well already. So, hey, let's talk about why we fight well, and let's kind of put it down. Let's begin to think through, and let's lay it out. Whatever that is for you, pick an area that you can both join in together and not have fun, but push through and kind of lay out a plan for that area right there. That would be helpful. So, and to begin to become very, very, very intentional about this. Plans are, somebody says planning is important, plans are not as important. The fact that you are doing this together, that you are working on a plan, should not mean that plans are set in concrete, and plans are never used as a baseball bat to beat your spouse over the head with. It is meant to help you communicate and to say, we agree about these things. It is not meant to be a tool upon which to inflict damage to your spouse. So sometimes that's an issue, but really to develop as a way of communicating and deciding this is what God has called us to do to build a great marriage. You got anything else?
Jeff he sent you a list of resources. Some of our things and books that we've liked, some sermons, or like Andy Stanley has done some things on guardrails. It's really good. And then one that's not listed is this book. And this has been a great book here. Probably one of my favorite ones that I've read here lately, as far as they kind of share the same story we do in the beginning.
This is the book they stole our book. We would have written this book.
So that's a really good one that we've read not too long, pretty recently.
Vertical Marriage by David Ann Wilson. Super good.
It's not listed on there.
Yeah, but that's another good one as well. We are grateful for you guys. All we have wanted to do over these 5 sessions is to inspire some conversations with you guys, to give you some topics. I don't know if y'all have ever had one of those dinners like Susan and I've had, where you kind of had dinner, but there's really kind of like, okay, and maybe the conversation has lagged a little bit. And we would love for you to take any one of these sessions and to begin to have a myriad of conversations over time, where you are both committed to your marriage and to the mission that God has given to you. Your marriage is so important to the kingdom of God. It is so important to what God is doing, to our witness. And what a joy and a blessing it is that God says that one of the primary ways that we get to witness to Jesus Christ is by loving our spouse really well. So let's love our spouses well, and let's build marriages that in fact do reflect Christ's love for the church. All right. We love you guys. Thanks for being with us for these last 5 weeks. We would love, if you've got questions or comments or thoughts, we would love to hear from you at some time. So happy Sunday evening. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being a part. See y'all.
Have a great week, everybody.
Bye.